Well, I want to tell you a story. Once there was a man, and he had two sons, big brother and little brother. And one day, the younger brother came to the dad and said, "Father, I would like my share of the inheritance now." What that meant was he wanted all of his money now, and it was really a terrible thing to say to his dad, because it meant, "I want you out of my life, and I want all your money now, and I'm going to go somewhere." And so the daddy did. The father gave him his share of the money, and the younger son took that money and he went far away to a distant country. He went a long way from home. And while he was there, he spent his money on food and stuff to drink, and he had parties all the time, and he had lots of friends. As long as he had lots of money, he had lots of friends. But then one day something bad happened. That country started running out of food. They didn't have enough food to eat. And he started running out of money. So he couldn't buy enough food to eat. And so all the friends started leaving him. And pretty soon he didn't have any friends, and he didn't have any money, and he didn't have any food. So you know what he did? He went to work for a pig farmer. Now this boy was a Jewish boy, so it was a terrible thing to have to work for a pig farmer. But he went to work for a pig farmer, and what he would do is when he was feeding the pigs, he'd be kind of throwing the food out for the pigs. He would eat some of the pig food himself. Yeah, just so he would have food in his belly, because he was so hungry. Well, one day he was in the pig pen, and he was feeding the pigs, and he was eating some of it for himself. And he realized that he was going to die there, that he was probably going to starve to death. And he remembered back home where he had left, that back home at his father's house, even the servants had plenty of food to eat. So he said, "I have sinned against heaven and against my father. I'm going to go home and tell him, I'm not worthy anymore, Father, to be your son. Just make me one of your servants, and at least I'll have food to eat." So he did. He came to his senses, and he stood up in the pig pen, and he started walking home. Now what do you think happened? He started walking towards home, and his father was looking for him. And his father was standing, and he saw his son coming from a long way off. And instead of waiting there all mad because his son had left, his father was so glad to see him. His father gathered up his big long robes. This was a long time ago when men wore robes. And he started running down the road to meet his son. And as he got closer to his son started to tell him, "Father, I've sinned against heaven and I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." But before he could get out all of his speech and all of his explanation, his father ran up to him and threw his arms around him and gave him a big hug and a kiss. And all the servants from the house had come running out too to see what he was running about. And the father turned around to all the servants and said, "Look, my son is home. Go back to the house and get sandals for his feet, get a ring for his finger, and get the best robe out of the house and cover up all these bad clothes he's wearing. Because look, my son who was dead is alive again. And my son who was lost has come home. And kill the fatted calf so we can have a party." They had like a big barbecue. And so they did. They threw a big party, and they had music, and they had dancing, and they were having this big party to celebrate the younger brother coming home. Now, what do you think the older brother thought of all this? Well, he'd been out working real hard in the field. He'd been outside working, and he came home from the field, kind of like these fields, and he heard the sound, he heard the party. He heard music and dancing. And there was a little servant boy walking by, and he stopped him and said, "What's the meaning of all this? What's going on?" And the little servant boy said, "Your father has killed the fatted calf. He's thrown a party because your younger brother has come home." Well, it made the older brother mad. It made him furious. He was so angry he would not go into the party. So he just stood outside of the house. Well, the father heard he was out there, and so the father came outside the house to the older brother and said, "Son, won't you come into the party?" He said, "I will not come into the party." He said, "I have worked here faithfully all these years for you. That son of yours," and he meant his younger brother, but he was so mad he wouldn't even call him his brother. He just said, "That young son of yours took all that money and has wasted it on parties and stuff to eat. And now he's come home after wasting all that money, and you have thrown a party for him. I've stayed here all these years. I've worked and worked, and you never even gave me like a little goat or something to have a party with my friends. I won't come in. And the father was so sad he wouldn't come in, and he looked at him. And he said, well, son, don't you understand? We had to celebrate. Your brother was lost and he's found. He was dead and he's come back to life. And don't you understand, son, that everything I have is already yours. You could have had anything you wanted. And the story ends with that older brother standing outside trying to decide whether to go into that party or not. Well, I'm ready to go inside. What do y'all think? Even if the older brother wasn't, we can go inside. You want to go somewhere and get warm and go inside?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Who told that story the first time? Do you remember? Jesus told that story the first time. It's one of my favorite stories of what he told, too.